Take your Bibles and turn to Job. Job chapter number 9, and we'll look at Job chapter 9 and 10 this evening. This is the response that Job gives back to Bildad. Bildad says this. I'll give you a refresher before we go into it, so that as you're reading it, you're understanding what he's, or maybe get a little bit more understanding over what he is saying. Bildad responds back to Job, and he says that, doth God pervert judgment, and doth the Almighty pervert justice? So he was saying last week, Job, God is just. Does he pervert justice? Is he an unjust God? Is he basically, he's sort of saying, do you think he's the mob boss? That he's just doing this stuff for his own selfish reasons? No, Job. He's saying, this is what Bildad is saying. Job, God doesn't pervert justice. God doesn't do those things. Therefore, this is Bildad's rather big logical step. Therefore, you must be a hypocrite. That's what he says, and you would have seen that or paid attention to it. We skipped that kind of bit last week. It was in my notes, but just time and circumstances led us in a different direction. But he says towards the end of chapter 11, or in the middle of chapter 8, verse 11, he says, can the rush grow up without mire? Can the flag grow without water? He talks about the reeds and about how reeds grow up, and when there's water, they're lush and they're green. But it doesn't take much for the water to disappear and the heat of the sun to come out, and it's like they're cut down very quickly. When I was preparing this last week, I wrote down about the Easter lilies, because we have Easter lilies at our house. I don't know if you have Easter lilies, but they're there, and they're vibrant, and they're great, and then it's like, no sooner that they're there, a week later they're gone, and mine are already dead, and they're gone again. And that's what he is sort of saying. He's saying, Job, you're like the hypocrites, where in their prime, it's like you're going to go forever and they're big and strong, and you're cut down when you're green, like those reeds. And he says in verse 12, whilst it is yet in their greenness and not cut down, it withereth before any other herb. So are the paths of all that forget God, and the hypocrite's hope shall perish. So he's basically saying to Job, well, God is just, he doesn't pervert justice, therefore you must be a hypocrite, because you've been cut down in your prime, and when you were blooming and you were green, you've been cut down. Now, it's a pretty big logical jump to make that. Now responds Job to this in chapter 9. And he says in verse 1, then Job answered and said, I know it is so of a truth. I agree with you, Bildad. At least in part is what Job is saying. I agree that God is just and that the Almighty does not pervert justice. I don't believe that God is unjust, is what Job is saying. But how should man be just with God? Yes, Jesus, thank you. That is how man can be just with God in the stricter sense, in the spiritual sense. But as he's saying, can anybody be just with God? No is the answer. Because God is almighty. He knows the hearts, and who's ever going to stand before him and plead the case and come out innocent and prove God wrong? So he says, how should man be just with God? Verse 3 says, if we will contend with him, he cannot answer him 1 of 1,000. He is wise in heart and mighty in strength. Who hath hardened himself against him and hath prospered? Which removeth the mountains, and they know not, which overturneth them in his anger, which shaketh the earth out of her place, and the pillars thereof tremble, which commandeth the sun, and it riseth not, and sealeth up the stars, which alone spreadeth out the heavens, and treadeth upon the waves of the sea. This is the Almighty. This is who we're supposed to plead with. Verse 9, he says, which maketh Arcturus, and Orion, and Pleiades, and the chambers of the south, which doeth great things, past finding out, yea, and wonders without number. Lo, he goeth by me, and I see him not. He passeth on also, but I perceive him not. Behold, he taketh away, who can hinder him? Who will say unto him, what doest thou? If God will not withdraw his anger, the proud helpers do stoop unto him. How much less shall I answer him, and choose out my words to reason with him? Whom, though I were righteous, yet would I not answer, but I would make supplication to my judge. So he's talking about in this, you picture a court case, where he's saying, I'm going to stand before God and plead my cause and give an answer to him. That's what he means about contending, about pleading cause. But he says, how can you plead your cause before God? Is anybody going to plead the cause before God and come out just out of that court case? He's like, no, this is what God does. And how can I come before that? Who will say unto him, what doest thou? Can you imagine standing before God and say, what are you doing? But some people want to say that. Want to find God to just kind of say, what are you doing? Verse 13 says, if God will not withdraw his anger, the proud helpers do stoop unto him. How much less shall I answer him and choose out my words to reason with him? Whom, though I were righteous, yet would I not answer, but I would make supplication to my judge. If I had called and he had answered me, yet would I not believe that he had hearkened unto my voice. That's true. Verse 17, for he breaketh me with tempest and multiplieth my wounds without cause. He will not suffer me to take my breath, but filleth me with bitterness. If I speak of strength, lo, he is strong. And if judgment, who shall set me a time to plead? If I justify myself, mine own mouth shall condemn me. If I say, I am perfect, it shall also prove me perverse. Though I were perfect, yet would I not know my soul. I would despise my life. This is one thing, thereof I said it, he destroyeth the perfect and the wicked. If the scourge slay suddenly, he will laugh at the trial of the innocent. The earth is given unto the hand of the wicked. He covereth the face of the judges thereof. If not, where and who is he? Now my days are swifter than a post. They flee away. They see no good. They are passed away as the swift ships, as the eagle that hasteth to the prey. If I say I will forget my complaint, I will leave off my heaviness and comfort myself. And am I afraid of all the sorrows? I know that thou wilt not hold me innocent. If I be wicked, why then labour I in vain? If I wash myself with snow water and make my hands never so clean, yet shalt thou plunge me in the ditch, and mine own clothes shall abhor me. For he is not a man as I am, that I should answer him, and we should come together in judgment. Neither is there any daysman betwixt us, that might lay his hand upon us. Let me take his rod away from me, and let not his fear terrify me. Then would I speak and not fear him, but it is not so with me. My soul is weary of my life. I will leave my complaint upon myself. I will speak in the bitterness of my soul. I will say unto God, do not condemn me. Show me wherefore thou contendest with me. It is good unto thee that thou shouldest oppress, that thou shouldest despise the work of thine hands. And is it good unto thee, so let me read that correctly. Is it good unto thee that thou shouldest oppress, that thou shouldest despise the work of thine hands, and shine upon the counsel of the wicked? Hast thou eyes of flesh, or seest thou as a man seest? Are thy days as the days of man? Are thy years as the man's days? That thou inquirest after mine iniquity, and searchest after my sin? Thou knowest that I am not wicked, and there is none that can deliver out of thine hand. Thine hands have made me, and fashioned me together round about, yet thou dost destroy me. Remember, I beseech thee, that thou hast made me as the clay, and wilt thou bring me into the dust again? Hast thou not poured me out as milk, and curdled me like cheese? Thou hast clothed me with skin and flesh, and hast fenced me with bones and sinews. Thou hast granted me life and favour, and thy visitation hath preserved my spirit. And these things hast thou hid in thine heart. I know that this is with thee. If I sin, then thou markest me, and thou wilt not acquit me from mine iniquity. But if I be wicked, woe unto me. And if I be righteous, yet will I not lift up my head. I am full of confusion. Therefore seest thou thine affliction, for it increaseth. Thou huntest me as a fierce lion, and against thou showest thyself marvellous unto me. Thou renewest thy witnesses against me, and increasest thine indignation upon me. Changes in war are against me. Wherefore then hast thou brought me forth out of the womb? Oh, that I had given up the ghost, and no eye had seen me. I should have been as though I had not been. I should have been carried from the womb to the grave. Are not my days few? Cease then, and let me alone, that I may take comfort a little. Before I go whence I shall not return, even to the land of darkness and the shadow of death. A land of darkness is darkness itself, and of the shadow of death without any order, and where the light is darkness. It's Job's reply to Bildad. It's a reply twofold. it's part to Bildad, it's part directed at Bildad, and it's part directed at God. He's wrestling with these things. Any comments, thoughts, questions, feedback from this 2 chapters here? How to Job's response? Connor, do you have the mic?
Just these 2 verses sort of caught my attention when I was reading through. Verse 10 of chapter 9, which doeth great things past finding out, yea, and wonders without number. Lo, he goeth by me, and I see him not. He passeth on also, but I perceive him not. And I was thinking the amount of times that God has stepped in and intervened in my life, many times that I probably haven't actually even noticed. But more so now, I'm becoming more diligent, I think, in understanding that God is in control of everything. And the little things and the big things that happen in my life, God is present there. And I'm thankful that he does actually intervene in my life when I go to make stupid decisions or silly things. And it's not just coincidences or it's luck or it's a small world and this and that. It's all actually of God. And reading those just made me think of that. And then I thought as well in verse 11 there of someone who's not saved. Just thinking of the city on Monday nights. Lo, he goeth by me, and I see him not. He passeth on also, and I perceive him not. And I just think about people getting tracts and people hearing the gospel and God trying to intervene in their lives all the time, and they just miss it or they perceive it not, and it just comes and goes. Like you were saying tonight with meeting those people at the caravan, that maybe their daughter's been praying for them, and then God came and passed by their way today in Stoneville inside a caravan going, yep. Here I am again, and whether they see him not or they perceive it not. And I just really, those are the 2 verses that stuck out to me from a saved point of view and from a lost point of view, that God is all over our lives. So yeah, that's what stood out to me in the chapters.
Yeah. Any other thoughts or comments on these chapters that you've read? I do encourage you to read it in advance, don't just read tonight.
Observation more than anything else, the deep knowledge that Job has of God. He understands, he understands he made the universe. He understands he can do anything. It's a real deep. If you read it slowly, and read the words, it's. I know, they reckon that Job's probably the oldest book in the Bible, possibly a contemporary of Abraham. Who knows? But they really had a deep understanding. He knew who he was dealing with. Not just some flippant, this is who I serve.
He knew God wasn't just some force, some energy, harmony with the universe. He absolutely knew God is a person who has will and intellect and emotion and authority and power. Absolutely.
Absolutely knew it. I'd love to talk to that guy.
Yeah.
Someday.
Yeah, someday that you actually finally get to talk with him. He won't want to talk about this stuff. No, that's done and dusted. Yeah. Yeah. Tony.
2 verses there, 20 and 21. If I justify myself, mine own mouth shall condemn me. If I say I am perfect, it shall also prove me perverse. And though I were perfect, yet I would not know my soul. I would despise my life. He seems to be very confused here at the moment. He's feeling guilty, agreeing with Bildad that he must be done something wrong, and that's why things are happening to him. But then the next 2 verses, 22 and 23. 22, this is one thing, therefore I said it, he destroyed the perfect and the wicked. And 23, if the scourge slay suddenly, he will laugh at the trial of the innocent. So then what he does, he goes against what Bildad says, and says that the innocent are going to be harmed as well.
Yeah.
And even down to the fact that God will laugh at them.
Yeah.
So,
he definitely acknowledges his inferiority before God, and he's acknowledging that before Bildad. Whoever. There's an interesting verse here. He says in verse 33, because this whole of idea that he's saying is like, how can I plead my cause before God? Like, he is so much mightier than me. Wherever that verse, one of the verses, he says, if I was wicked, I would hang my head in his presence. And if I was righteous, I'd hang my head in his presence because I don't feel worthy one way or the other. And he says in verse 33, which I find a funny kind of, or quite a thought, neither is there any daysman betwixt us. That's like an umpire, a judge, sort of daysman is. He says, so if I contend with God, and if you have two people that are against each other, or they have opposing sides in a matter, usually you have the person that's a referee, or the umpire, or the ombudsman that you have in government circles, that comes between and is neutral on it. And he says, but there's no such thing as a daysman between you and God in that sense. But Cottle would say, Jesus, that's what you mean. That's your cue there. Jesus ultimately is he is our daysman. He is the umpire that comes betwixt us, between us. But he says, neither is there any daysman betwixt us, that he might lay his hand upon us, let him take his rod away. He's like, in a boxing match where one guy starts pummeling the other guy, the umpire steps in and separates them and says, right, go, you stop pounding this guy. And he's like, there's no one, when I'm up against God, there's no umpire that's going to step in and put his arm on him and separate us. It's just like God is just laying blow after blow after blow, and I'm like on the canvas here, like can't get up, and this guy is just getting me. And he says, there's no umpire to stop the fight. That's how he's feeling in this matter. And there are people that feel like that. And you might get to that stage in life where you just think, man, I feel like I'm in an unfair fight here against someone, and there's no one stepping in here on my behalf. But I never really talked about the Jesus side of things as I was looking at Job, but absolutely, that is the right thing, because you know what? We do have someone, honestly, that is a wonderful thought. It's not in my notes, but that truly is a wonderful thought. That it's who Jesus is. He is the daysman. He is the umpire. He is the reconciler. He is the one who has the respect with God and with man. And he is the one that comes between God and man. The holy God against the sinful man, Jesus Christ, is the one who goes between unifying and harmonizing those two parties. That's a wonderful image, and it's exactly what Jesus does on our behalf. He is the daysman. But yeah, Job definitely just feels like he's taken the pounding and taken the punches here. The language here is taken from the court of justice and means that it is a trial were instituted, where God would submit charges and the matter were left to adjudication, and man could answer the charges against him. And Job is saying, like, it doesn't matter if I could find him, it's not going to work in my behalf, because he's mightier and powerful and smarter and wiser and all of those things. And he lays that down. He's just saying it's not a fair fight. And you can't match up against him. And Job, in his hypothetical court date with the judge, he says, this is what I would say to God in chapter 10. He says in verse 2, he says, I will say unto God, he says it in verse 2, this is what I'll say unto God, do not condemn me. Verse 3 says, it is good unto thee that thou shouldest oppress, that thou shouldest despise the work of thine hands, and shine upon the counsel of the wicked. Show me the reasons for you condemning me. Is it good that you should do this to me? Verses 4 through 6, he says, hast thou eyes of flesh, or seest thou as man sees? And are thy days as the days of man? Are thy years as man's days, that thou inquirest after mine iniquity, and searchest after sin? This is what he's saying to God. He said, if I could find God, I'd ask him, do you know what it's like to be a man? Which Cottle would say, yeah, he does know what it's like to be a man. Because that's what Job is saying. Do you see with the eyes of a man? Do you feel with the heart of a man? Do you know what it is to have the pain and the sorrow? To have the heartache of lost relations, and to have the heartache of lost finances, and have the heartache of the health and the physicality and the emotions, and to have friends turn away from you, and to have close relations turn away from you? Do you know what it's like to be a man? And we can say, yeah, he does. He has not been... He is touched with the feelings of our infirmities in all points, like as we are. Yet he was without sin. So absolutely, never saw that. Honestly, I was looking blind, but that is all the way through this chapter. As Job is saying this, Jesus comes off the page. And he is the daysman, and he is touched with the feelings of our infirmities, and he does know what it is to be a man, and he does do that. And Job says this, remember, I beseech you, that thou hast made me the clay, and wilt thou bring me unto dust again? Remember, God, don't crush me. You made me out of the dust. Don't put me back to the dust. You don't have to do much to put me back there. Be gentle with me, be easy with me. And then he says in verse number 20, he's basically just saying, let me be. Are not my days few? I don't live for very long. He's probably going to live longer than us. We live even less than Job would live. He says, are not my days few? Cease then, and let me alone, that I may take comfort a little. Just let me be. Just let me be. And these things are wrestles. And I heard a man on the radio today, and I'd known him growing up in Western Australia, the name anyway, he's a musician, a local musician. I never knew the connections of the families, but Jamie McCanty, Troy McCanty. You know Troy McCanty, the bikie, the coffin cheater. Jim McCanty is Slim Jim and the Fats, which is a musical group around Perth. Anyway, they're brothers. I didn't know they were brothers, and messed up family. He seems to be okay. He's in the music side of things, and his brother's in the coffin cheaters, and their family are fighting about old money, and they're rich and wealthy. But he went to Trinity. Very Catholic school, very elite school here in Perth. Went to Trinity College, and from like a young age, primary school, year 4 or so, he was never really interested in music. I didn't think I was interested in music, but ended up trying out for the choir, and he got a scholarship all the way through Trinity because he was in the boys' choir. And so he went through Catholic school and sang at Catholic church, and they were interviewing him on the radio. It just happened to be driving around at lunchtime. It was Stephen Mills on 6PR and was interviewing him. And he said, do you still have religious beliefs? Are you still practicing in faith? And he said, oh, no, I've outgrown that. And he said, oh, and Steve Mills, I think he's a practicing Catholic, and he said, oh, how come you, what do you mean by that? And he said, I've learned a long time ago that I can't reconcile what I was taught with what I see in this world. And he says, I can't reconcile God with seeing kids with cancer and my own health battles and my family and different things. And he says, and then the conversation kind of moved on. And these things that again, I say to you again, that what Job is wrestling with isn't just something that he wrestles with. It's something that lost and saved wrestle with. How do you reconcile all the hurt, the heartache in this world and attribute it to God being good and just and holy? Because we look at this world and say, surely God can't be just and he can't be good because of all the sorrow and the hurt and the heartache and the misery that's in our world. And we can understand Job saying that. And who is it that we can stand before God? Because he's stronger and mighty than us, he can crush us anyway. And so these things that Job wrestles with, I say again to you tonight, that they are absolutely the things that people wrestle with. And you may not have got to a stage in your life where you wrestle with it, and you might be in a position right now tonight where you say, I don't think I'd ever wrestle with it like Job would wrestle with it, like how he's wrestling with it. But I say to you, you are one child dying in a car accident away from being where Job is. You are one bankruptcy away from where Job is. And you are just something major going wrong in your life, and then all of a sudden your pristine life that is green like the reeds in the water is taken away. It's one cancer diagnosis. That's how fragile life is. And Job had that pulled out, and now he has to question God. And there are many people in life whose circumstances of life have made them question God. And that's what Job is about. The book of Job is about questioning God. And it's interesting that the Bible, actually, God has put a book in the Bible about man questioning God, because God expects it. And it's there for us to question God and to learn, as Ross said, even more about who God is. And Job went into this knowing a lot about God, as is testified, and he came out knowing a lot more about God. And there's some things here I can't always answer all the problems. Why do? And this is the question that if you go soul winning for 5 minutes, you'll get this question. Oh yeah, then why does God allow bad things in the world? And Job deals with these things, and Job is wrestling with these same things, and we will wrestle with them for a few more weeks before we come to the answer of Elihu, and then God himself answering out of the whirlwind and giving us some answers as to why he allows it. Find a prayer partner or two tonight and pray.